Asteroids are coming crashing through the atmosphere. People are screaming in horror, running, ripping their hair out. Others are finding robotic armed spider-like creatures, smashing them as they go forth and blow out their death rays and crush everything in its power. And one guy, one regular old father, grabs his kids and gets in the car and somehow escapes the devastation, and he finds that sort of new Eden where they recreate and somehow survive this apocalypse. You know, you saw it as this sort of big, giant, huge explosion that would be obvious. We didn't see it as something that would happen insidiously, slowly, like a cancer, within the culture itself, crumbling every bit of foundation that would have made your country great. And here we sit on a podcast, 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, Facebook, YouTube Live, which will then venture out into Spotify land. And it's when we talk about things like this, and still can, apparently, still have the freedom to speak freely about things that are incredibly unfree. So, you don't have to ask me twice. As long as I'm here, and as long as there is breath in my lungs, I will be here on Mondays, preparing you for the battle of your lives. And maybe you'll laugh along the way. Maybe you'll weep. But whatever happens, you won't be alone. Because God's comic, Brad Stine, is here with his crazy old podcast that you guys created out of whole cloth. The name of the show? Brad Stine Has Issues. And if you wanted to describe it in sign language, you'd call it... What if you didn't? What if you wanted to describe it in music? Well, it wouldn't be long, but it would have a lot of vibrance. Get you all squared away. Matter of fact, I'll bet you it would sound like... this. Yeah? Well, listen,
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, we're live.
Well,
Start talking.
I was starting to talk.
Stop being the podcast man.
I'm podcasting as we speak. You know, I got to say, I picked up my glasses. These are my just for the podcast glasses, and this happened. So you can laugh, but now this is what I get. So this is if this son, I think if we were ever destined to prove a point that Brad Stine has issues every stinking time. Because I got to tell you something, son, you locked in the audio. We actually can be heard like professionals. I thought maybe we're getting on the other side of this thing, but no, this is what I got going here. And I don't know. You know what? Who cares? Right now, I'm with my people. I'm with my son. If you don't know the voice in the background, folks, this is God's comic, Brad Stine. This is Brad Stine Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in cacophony of clarity. That voice, that ethereal voice that you hear with its chuckles and its insight and its dry humor is my son, Wyatt Leroy Stine. Just got back from his shift at Lowe's, and he did, in fact, issue from my loins. But he's here today, and he's a fully grown 26-year-old man. Son, tell everybody what you're thinking about today. Anything good happening?
Good. Well, let's see what happened. I woke up way earlier than I wanted to.
Right.
I spent half the day finding wrenches. Came back to set everything up for the stream. The computer crashed like 5 times. Then we started the stream. And now this is happening. So, yeah, not a good thing. Not a single good thing.
Which means we are locked in like we always.
In business.
Woohoo! Hey, I want to say hi to some folks out there. Nick Kress is watching with you. Well, you can't beat Nick Kress. We like to call him Saint Nick because not only does he donate to this podcast because the poor guy obviously feels sorry for us. I'm sure he sits and snickers. Why do you think? Do you think Nick is constantly in some kind of, I don't know, euphoric stupor somewhere after all the vapors that he has sucked in for his business? You know, he's got a air conditioning, heating company, so I'm sure it's filled with fluoride and what other stuff? Fluoride, that wouldn't be it. That would be something to do with teeth. What do they have? Fluor something? There's something with fluor in the gases. What am I thinking of? Fluorescein? Florence Henderson?
No, wait.
What am I thinking?
Wait. Fluor something in the what?
Like, isn't there a gas that's like in air conditioning gas or heating, like Freon would be exactly what I meant. Listen, in Latin, it's called fluoron, and I always go to the Latin. I'm just so used to speaking that as my second language, that in Aramaic. But yeah, fluorine. What did you call it? What was the pagan view of it, or the lower class view? You called it
Freon.
Freon. Yeah, Freon. Or for those of you watching from other states that don't have education. That's what he has, but that's the first guy I saw, son, was Nick Kress. And, son, I'm curious. I know that you don't have the same ladder of folks connecting. We figured that out over the years. But who's the first for you?
Nick Kress.
Wait a minute. Could Ashley Haas be second?
Yes.
What? Louis Leone third?
Fourth.
Jessica Martinez?
Fifth, yeah.
She's got a severed hand. Clara Beatty's here.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, from Belleville. Sean Syriac, hey bud. Shauna Ferrick, howdy. Marsha Bueno, Reed, Ella Brad White, and everybody. Sherry Holtz, Jordan, Brendan, Ray, Brenda Ray, Marlo, Dusty Willem. Oh my gosh. Wyatt, we're
in sync. We
You know, this is probably a perfect time for me to die suddenly.
We're never going to do this again.
I know.
This is the only time it's going to... You start here first and only.
Wyatt, who's my favorite four-named lady?
I have to...
Hall of Fame Marie Rauchi. You know that. She's from Florida City.
I'm sorry, but I have trouble memorizing one name from people.
Well, you never remember. Whitney Thiessen's here. Good evening, Brad White and everyone else. Greg Smith. Hi there, White, and his dad. Deanna Miller. Good evening, all. Tom Kashul Sr., hello from Parkridge, Illinois. Christ has risen. Christos Vorskris in Ukrainian. Wow, I don't speak Ukrainian, but I feel like I pronounce it properly. Is that right? Christos Vorskris? Wyatt? You're Ukrainian. Are you brushed up before the episode, as I promised?
I thought I was going to do the Swahili bit.
Holy crap. Joseph Smith, hello, Brad from Texas. Sean Syriac, Gina Sizemore, you are a hoot. Stop it in before I clean the house and sew some. That's Gina, of course. Carrie Tudor. Hi, Brad and White. All supporters, missed you all. How was your week? Rebecca Daly Dwyer's got all kinds of icons. Judith Reed Times, screwed over by an itty-bitty screw. Tiniest screw ever, just screwed. Wyatt, she wants to use the word screw. Why?
Hardware joke.
Yes! I mean, and Wyatt, I'm missing a screw. Which aisle?
17. Honestly, it's a specialty thing. It's probably an M3.
Yeah.
So I would say probably in the metric section, Bay 20.
I am so proud of you, son.
I'm not.
I know. Hey, guess who's here? Calvin Behringer. Hello from Vegas, Kalamazoo. I met Calvin Behringer, son, back in 1980. We worked together at a bakery where we made hot sauce and cheesecakes, and I ran the forklift and brought them all kinds of stuff, ingredients, and I met him there and met his wife, and they're still together after all these years. Isn't that neat?
Yeah. I didn't know you drove a forklift.
I did way back in the day, son. This was when forklifts were made of wood. No wheels. You just had to push them around like a Fred Flintstone, and then you really just picked everything up and stuck it down and moved it around. It wasn't sophisticated.
So what did the forklift part do then?
It was forked. It had a forkness.
But what did the fork do if you just lifted it anyway?
Yeah, it was there to give the illusion that you had high-end equipment, and we were a low-budget bakery, trust me.
Okay, so actual forklifts did exist back then.
Wait a minute.
You just didn't have any, right?
Wyatt.
Yeah? What?
I was reading Rodney Jarvis. Now, the reason I read Rodney Jarvis is because I didn't know who he was. Something felt wrong. I started reading it. It says, "Hey, guys, it's me." Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Karen.
What?
I'm still unable to use my Facebook or Messenger now. My aunt passed away, so driving back from Mississippi. Try to watch. Have a great show. First off, I'm sorry for your aunt passing away. I did not know that was going to be in the middle of the sentence. So as I went to joke with you, you tell me that you were mourning your aunt, so that throws a wrench, no pun intended. Which aisle? Which aisle?
Aisle 74.
74. That throws an aisle 74 into you, Karen. I'm sorry for your aunt, and but I hope you can hear it. I'm sorry you can't get on Facebook anymore. What happened to her? Why? Do you think it's the FBI?
CIA, but I'd say more likely.
Okay. Hey, guess what? Mm-hmm. Nick Kress came in and gave us an answer to our question. It's called refrigerants. Freon is a brand name. Refrigerant is a generic name. And why? You know what the generic name for generic is?
Generally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul, the famous Russian safe travels. Karen, sorry for your loss, Karen, who isn't. Thought freedom to his band many years ago and went with Puron. Oh, okay. That was difficult to read. Thank you, Brad, for sending up What God Says. You got it, Kate Sue. Susie Smith is here. James Voigt, Snowden, Illinois, of course. Let's see. And...
So, did you have a better joke, like punchline for the Freon bit? Because it seemed like you were pretty disappointed in my response.
I didn't hear it. Go ahead. Say it again. So let's get rid of Freon.
Wait, what?
I'm setting you up. I don't remember how I set it up in the first.
Can you set it up without mumbling it, like you're going at the speed?
So Wyatt, if I'm not mistaken, they used to call it No.
Freon is the brand name. Refrigerant is the generic name.
Right. What's the generic name for generic?
I don't know. How do you form a punchline out of that? That's like...
Why do you just say generic?
Because that's...
What's the generic name for generic? You said, I think it's generic. See, you just had a little extra sort of... See, again, you're not the comic, I am. It comes naturally...
Fine, then. You come up with a better one then.
I just did. It wasn't trying.
Taking my joke is not doing it better than me.
Lord, I still need this.
You couldn't think of it...
I didn't care. I was moving on.
What do you mean you didn't care? You set the joke up. Well, if anyone here should have cared, it would have been you.
I don't care. Hey, listen, I got to tell you guys something. I've got some shows coming up next 2 weeks before we end April. And April's a special month because tomorrow, starting tomorrow, I am going to be in Mobridge, South Dakota at Cornerstone Community Church. It will actually be there now. Tomorrow I'm flying in, but I'll be there on Wednesday night, the 19th, Mobridge, South Dakota, Cornerstone Community Church. On the 20th, I'll be in can't see it. Darn it, Wyatt. I'm going to be in...
if only you had glasses or something.
Cresperd. I can't read my writing. Cresselard, South Dakota. Cresperd United Methodist Church. I thought if I kept saying it, mispronouncing it long enough, people would somehow stumble upon what I'm trying to get at.
Do you need me to get
Crestland.
you a pair of glasses
Crestland. Hey, 21st, I'll be at New Song Church in Bismarck, North Dakota. And then on the 27th, next week, I will be at the Assemblies of God in Brookings, Oregon. 28th, I'll be at Faith Lutheran in Monmouth, Oregon. And on 30th, at New Hope College Church in Eugene, Oregon. I'm going to Oregon. I'm going where the demons are hanging, son. And I'm going to take them down one by one. You think I'm afraid?
No. I don't think you have a reason to. They're already dead.
Okay.
They're hanging, right?
Yes. Hey, listen. Lisa Petro Duchak said, I finally remembered on Monday you were on rather than 3 days later.
Okay, you've been listening to us for how long, and you just now realized
I know.
On Mondays?
Hey, guess who's showing up? Jessica Ballman. Hello from South Dakota. I'll be seeing you for the first time this Wednesday. So that scares me because now somebody will be there that I'm going to have to remember her name. And I won't, son. I won't remember her name. And she'll say, do you remember when I was on your thread? And I'll have to call you and say, son, do you remember her? And you'll be going, generically, I do.
Actually, what I said was generally. You said generically. And I think generally is better.
Well, listen.
Because it's not generic.
Indeed. Listen, we have a great, great show for you.
You might not know it, but we do in fact have a great show for you tonight.
Not that anything that we've done so far would indicate that.
Averting the audience's expectations is the first rule of comedy.
Oh my Lord, is that true? No. Always leave the audience wanting more.
Or in this case, anything of substance.
Yes, or in our case, leave the audience leaving. But here's the thing. I want you guys to know that I'm so grateful you guys show up in Stine Has Issues. It's such a honor and a privilege to have you guys show up live. Not everybody does. You know, most podcasts, even the big successful ones, which is one that we don't fit in that category.
One of these days.
One day. Let's believe in the greatest things. But one of these days, I might even be even more successful, and we're going to certainly shoot for that. Why not shoot for the stars? And then if you land on the moon, you still got pretty high. That's the way I've always looked at it.
Well, actually, that's not entirely true. The nearest star is several light years away, and the moon is like 380,000 miles away. So if you shoot for the stars and you hit the moon, you've not only missed, you missed so hard. I don't think there's a way to describe how badly you just missed.
Listen, is the sun closer than the nearest star?
Well, look, even if you hit the sun, you still for 400 times off your target.
Yeah, what is the sun, right? What's it considered?
A nuisance? General...
Is it a star?
I think it's a Class 1A.
Class 1A what?
Star.
Okay, so I heard somebody with their big mouth saying, oh, the stars are so far away, they're billions of light years away, you couldn't even begin to get... And I'm thinking, if I'm not mistaken, I can see the sun pretty much every time I look.
Yeah, well, you see, the thing that you seem to forget is that even with your smart alecky response, I'm still correct at my main premise that the nearest star is so far away from the Earth compared to the moon that if you aimed for a star and you hit the moon...
You're still pretty high.
No, listen. No. If you're an archer and you're trying to hit the bullseye...
Yeah.
And you fire your bow backwards, I don't care if you hit another target behind you, you still royally messed up.
Okay. Well, listen, I didn't know you were going to take an archer analogy, and that really is making it difficult for me.
Well, I wanted to make sure you got the point.
Listen, I know you're trying to feather your nest when it comes to getting all these zingers in, but I just don't know how to move forward and keep the audience interested because we keep missing the mark.
Really? Where have I heard that joke before? Within the past 30 seconds.
You didn't say miss the mark.
I'm pretty sure I did, didn't I?
You pretty much didn't.
Audience, did I forget what the conversation was?
You didn't even remember your own joke, which I superseded and wide. If you can't even remember your own punchlines, you're going to make me quiver. Listen, we're going to move on from the archery material, and here's why. We have to think about what's happening in America as we speak. Now, if you're not aware of this or not, and you should be, I hope you are. I hope you're very aware of what's going on. Why, something's blowing up on my thing. It's like the big faces got super big, and they went boom, 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 like the emojis. How come that happened?
It's because people are like posting like smiley faces.
No, but it was different. And usually they just drift up like bubbles. This time they like congregated and they got super big and they blew up. Is that like the sun?
That's not good.
Okay.
It's Monday, right? Oh no. Giant faces on Mondays, bad sign.
Okay, well listen, if you're not going to give me
the pool. Just do not call pool. Trust me.
Okay. Speaking of a car in the pool. I remember years ago having this conversation with my wife, who at that time wasn't my wife. She was my fiance, but at that time she wasn't my fiance. She was my girlfriend. And why a girlfriend is, of course, a technical term of normally considered the woman that is exclusive to you, as boyfriend would be as well. But in some odd way, I suppose you could still call a wife a girlfriend, yeah? Because it does get a little confusing, because girlfriend could be a friend that's a girl, whereas we know of girlfriend as being that exclusive romantic attraction, right? But nevertheless, that was your mom, who I was dating at the time, and she wanted to give some money to a homeless guy. Now, I am not helping people out of their difficulties. Matter of fact, as a Christian, I am duty-bound and use that concept of helping the downtrodden, those who are not your relatives, those who are not perhaps in your elite circle, but help them anyways. It's a very Christian concept. It's where we get the idea of the Good Samaritan, helping somebody that maybe you don't even normally wouldn't even hang out with, son. And I've told her the problem I have is not that I wouldn't want to help this guy, because I would. My problem is I'm guessing he's going to go off and get drunk or do drugs. And I just don't know how that is helping him, because as a conservative, we never are thinking about whether we want to help people who are in dire straits. We do. But we want to help them. You don't help an alcoholic by buying them vodka. You don't help a heroin addict by buying him a speedball. Why? You don't. Give me another analogy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was kind of distracted trying to make your picture look readable because you took it like...
Okay.
You did that thing where you took a picture with your phone, but you did it vertically.
Okay.
Which is... if it's not a crime, it should be one.
Okay. Well, anyway.
Okay.
Well, here's the deal. So she...
Okay. You don't cure a peanut allergy by force-feeding them peanut butter.
Okay, that would work.
Yeah.
That would work. So I think you guys get the drift. I just believe that if I knew, and I think a lot of people have the same concept that, well, if you're really hungry, I'll buy you some food. And then I know you're getting nutrients, and I know that the money is being helpful to you as opposed to feeding your addiction. But she said, you know what, I just feel like if I choose to give this to somebody, then whatever they do with it is up to them. But I did the right thing. And I think there's something to that. I believe that if you are trying to help someone, that God honors your intent. He honors your heart. I still think you should be prudent and wise and diligent about not being frivolous and foolish, especially if something appears to be not healthy and helpful to somebody. So it is a kind of a fine line. But you never know what people or how people or have ended up in this what we used to call a hobo. Now we call them a homeless person. But that never made sense to me, because if you live in an apartment, it's not your home, it's literally an apartment. So you're kind of homeless, you don't have a home. If you live out in the woods in a tent, you're homeless, but you're dry, you're fed. Well, so in some ways, this I think it's lost in translation. Why do you get some insight onto that homeless person?
Yeah. I don't think your definition of home is correct.
Okay.
A home, at its very simplest, is just a people container.
A people? People container.
I'm not even sure how you even thought that even if you didn't understand what I said, of every word you could have thought I said, why would you go for a make-believe one?
Peephole? I don't know. It sounded interesting to me. I thought maybe it was some kind of magical fairy tale where you look through the peephole and you see another dimension. I don't know.
I guess most homes have peepholes, so you could make that argument.
Okay, well, here's the deal. I always looked at it like this. A cave. If you think about the cave, we used to see the Neanderthals live in the cave, the cavemen, right? Now, what is a cave, son? Well, it's a hole in the mountain.
Yeah.
Right? Just a hole.
What do you think home originated from? They just misspelled and mispronounced hole.
Okay, but here's the deal. And you're probably right. That's the etymology of home.
That's the
is
unfortunate
hole.
thing about the English language is that my joke is probably correct.
It is. And here's the thing about caves, and I want you to get your thoughts on this. So a cave is literally a hole with a mountain around it.
Yeah, or a hill.
Or a hill. So if I build a house, what I've really built is a hole with a house around it. So anyways, that's the way I see it.
Wait, what?
Well,
Hold on.
if a cave is a hole with a mountain around it, then a home is a hole with a house around it. Same principle.
Well, no,
all you're
not
doing
just-
is building a covering over the hole you want to
It's not just
reside
one
in.
hole, though.
Well,
Houses have many holes.
but they're
Too
within
many holes.
they're within the meta hole, the giant hole, the humongous hole. They are part of and attached to the ultimate hole.
Is there like a minimum amount of holes that a house needs to be a house?
As long as it has got it's contained, however many holes are within, like a honeycomb, right?
Okay,
or like an ant hill. It's got all these little things, but it's all inside the hill. So the home is simply
Okay.
a hole with a house around.
But
it.
like with this, let's say that a tornado comes by and rips off one of your walls. Is it still a house?
Yeah.
Okay, what if another wall goes? Still a house.
Not if it collapses. Then you are no longer in a hole.
So it doesn't matter how much space is open to the elements as long as it's still standing.
Yeah, as long as you are contained in the hole. The hole can contain you. Because if you have no containment, there's really no hole, you're just an openness.
Okay, well, what if all four walls come down, it collapses, and you just hide in the rubble? You're still being contained.
Yes.
Just really poorly.
If you're in the rubble, you are in a home. You're still in a hole with a collapsed home around you. That's true.
I mean, if you think about it, a cave is just a home that hasn't collapsed yet.
Right. And that's what I'm getting at. So speaking of collapsing homes, I was looking today, I was driving to the store, Wyatt. I needed to get something at the store.
You needed to get a picture for this podcast.
Right. And there's a guy that is on the corner of our, close to our home.
Oh, yeah, Hobo Henry.
Hobo Henry.
Yeah.
And, well, that's what we call him. It's just our little sweet.
that's what I called him, which is weird because his name was Frank.
It is. But, who knows? Who knows? Just, it's fun. We're being lighthearted with the man. We're being kind to the guy. But he's there every single day on the corner with all of his signs filled. It's always cardboard, filled with writing you can never read, except for they will always make sure God bless is huge and some biblical reference point. That's how they scam the money, is they always add God bless you to make you feel guilty, or put a Bible verse like, listen, God is not taking care of me. He's not. So here's Bible verse. So you're going to have to do it. I'm here, out here. I don't know how I'm going to survive. And I noticed the guy sitting there on his folding chair and his jacket and his food and everything around him, just sitting there, because I know where they live. They go off into the little woods. They've got the little structure they've created. They basically are living for free. They don't work. They get paid by people just handing them money. And then I saw something interesting that I had not seen before when I saw the guy sitting there, and he had something on his lap, and he was looking at it very, very focused. And when I saw what it was, I had to take a picture and send it to my son so he could bring it up. So this is what I saw from the poor homeless guy that can barely survive. He's wasting away because he can't afford food. This is what he had on his lap this afternoon. Why? Can you show him the photo?
Yeah, I tried to blow it up as much as possible,
It's all right.
but yeah.
Okay. There's my homeless guy, and if you can't see it, son, because he's got a black jacket.
Yeah.
He's got a laptop, son.
Oh my! I just realized that he has an actual, the same kind of laptop that we use.
He's on a laptop using clearly the Walgreens Wi-Fi to watch the movies while he's begging for food and clothing that he clearly doesn't have. The guy's on a computer. If you're trying to gain or garner sympathy, Wyatt, as a homeless person who can barely survive one more day, do you think your best strategy is to have a laptop?
Only if you show that you're running dial-up.
Yeah, right. It's like, I know you're thinking I got this, but it's old school. I have to wait for it to connect. I got to wait a few seconds. It's not high speed.
It takes me 5 minutes just to boot up
Minesweeper. It's really, so that's what I saw. So I don't know what to say, folks, but it tells me something about America. And that is that America, which is being taught to our children, you should hate it. It's terrible. It's degrading. It's racist. It's bigoted. It steals. Capitalism must die. Marxism and communism must rule. It's winning, by the way. Marxism is taking over us unless the people fight. We will not survive. We are literally dying. And my podcast will explore that America's dying unless. That's what I'm going to start talking about. Because we're dying right in front of our eyes, and it's because we're being sold out by our politicians. They have sold us out. And very, very rich people who will never, ever live under the standards they are going to demand and force upon humanity. It is the most despicable thing I've ever seen. I've told you this years ago. I never had a problem with rich people. I was never jealous because I always saw them as an inspiration. Look, the guy built himself up from his bootstraps and he got rich. I can do that, and it was an inspiration to me. I got to tell you, the more I see Bill Gates, the more I despise that man. I despise him. He is a megalomaniac, and he's evil. Evil. Because he's trying to decide how we can eat, where we can eat, who gets to live. I mean, this is really happening, folks, by a guy who made millions and billions and billions and billions of dollars off the capitalist system of America, and now he sits in this who knows what type of luxury, who knows what kind of luxury, what kind of island he's got set up where he could live by himself. If they shut down every piece of electricity, every food source vanished today, if every means of movement, he's got some island somewhere with 3 doctors on staff, a full operating room, every kind of drug you need, food stored up for 200 years. He's going to make sure that the population is depopulated. He's going to make sure eugenics is happening. He's going to make sure people die because he wants to make sure that the planet makes it. Despicable man. And I'm allowed to speak truth. And if truth means that some people are despicable, like Hitler, I get to say so. Does that mean that man couldn't come to Christ and repent and say, let me use my money to actually help capitalism and help free markets and help people to get out of the horrible poverty they are in? Couldn't he do that? Of course he could do that. Is he going to do that? I don't know. I will pray for him to do that. I have to. Don't want to. Don't want to. Don't like this guy at all. The whole World Economic Forum, everything that's happening to the world and everything that's happening to this country is a big, giant, global initiative that is a monolith, and it ain't slowing down. It's crushing everything in its way. The only shot is America, and Americans haven't yet stood up and said no. So I'm watching this guy on a laptop, and it's like, this is what it looks like. Our homeless. You go to Calcutta, you go to India, you go to Haiti. You want to see poverty beyond anything you can believe. Children next to raw, open sewers. That's poverty. No food, nothing. Digging through garbage every day, trying to eat, trying to survive one more day. Our homeless have laptops. You want to know why America's dying? Because clearly we didn't get the message. You better hang on to virtue. You better hang on to God Almighty's morality. You better hang on to taking care of people. You better be grateful for what you have, or I promise you I will take it away. This is nothing new. America doesn't get a pass any more than Israel, his chosen people, got a pass. And that's where we are. The hammer is being dropped on this country. Deservedly so, because Christians did not stand up every time a moral law was violated. We just didn't. We didn't. We were comfortable. We didn't realize it. We didn't realize what was happening, but it was. And so we sit here now with a confusion. How do we move forward? Can we survive? Now, obviously the answer is, well, we can. But are we going to? And right now, as we sit, No, we're not. I speak of these things on my podcast for two reasons. I try to speak truth, and everything is being filmed, goes into the archives. People can grab it, they can copy it. It will be on Facebook archives, YouTube archives. We'll have our own recorded version of it. So it will always exist in the ethers. If I'm killed, if I'm shot, if I'm imprisoned, if I'm vanish, this stuff will exist. Years from now, when I'm gone, it will be out there. Somebody will stumble upon it. So the way I look at my podcast now, it's kind of like Anne Frank's diary. I'm telling people what's happening while it's happening, so that if it all ends with me soon, I made a record of what was happening, so the future generation can say, wow, why didn't anybody listen? Why didn't anybody do anything? Bud Light. Big news this last week, because they decided, you know who we really, really need to tap into? It's the transgender market. These are the Bud Light fans. These are the Bud Light drinkers. These are the people that clearly have sustained Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light, which I think was the #1 beer in America, for years and years and years. It's always been the transgender community. Clearly, they are a market force that's unbelievable. But suddenly, the one little tiny, I don't even drink, but the one little tiny, little less leftover products and services that were in the conservative realm, in the patriot realm, in the American realm, in the regular blue-collar man realm. Bud Light, crappy beer. But it was popular, and it was drunk by more than anybody else, I think, in the U.S. And they said, let's put Dylan Mulcahy on a can, a guy who mocks women, a guy who parades as a caricature of women, which continues to facilitate the idea that women need to be knocked out of women's sports and let men who think they're women do. It's so beyond anything we could have even begun to imagine 10 years ago that it's hard to even articulate it where we are. But people started saying new. Kid Rock blew it up, I think, with a machine gun, and I know John Rich, which has been on the podcast. You guys remember seeing him. He's got a bar in Nashville. He said, I'm pulling it all. That stuff's gone. It doesn't exist in his bar anymore. You can't get one. We had him take it off of, I think, his Clay Travis maybe took it off of his rider for his touring. I think they've lost $4 billion. They took a hit, big hit. And Trump Jr. comes on a couple of days ago. He says, you know what, let's not do that to them. Because, hey, they made a mistake on that one, but they have been big supporters of Republicans for a long time, so let's give them some slack. What? I got to tell you guys, one of the reasons that we are losing our freedoms and our liberties in America, one of the biggest reasons, is because the conservatives, the patriots, the First Amendment believers, Second Amendment believers, conservatives, moral people, Christian people, have not consolidated and stood by their virtues and their principles and stated, I cannot give you any money or participate in this. I can't. They haven't done it. And the left doesn't let up. They want to cancel somebody. They make sure they don't stop until you're gone. And I said from the get-go, I said, what we have to do, if we're going to have any shot at getting some fairness and some clarity and some morality and some sort of conservative return of balance to this country, if we have a shot, we will have to bury a company, bankrupt it, end it. No forgiveness, no changes, no oops. We have to destroy it. Not like anarchists. We're not going to go burn it up. We're not going to go riot. We're not going to go break things. We're not going to go fight. We're not going to go steal. We're just going to not touch your product till you lose everything. Why? Out of vengeance? Out of wokeism, trying to cancel somebody? We'll show you. No, to say it's the only means that we can get our point across, that you should have just done what businesses have done for hundreds of years. Stayed neutral, just sell it to whoever wants it, and get out of taking a side. But you did. You crapped on the one group of people that bought your stuff, and my prayer and hope is they never buy your product again. Again! Now, if you want to say that was a mistake, guys, we're going to give $1 billion to conservative causes. We're going to give $1 billion to some Christian causes and some children, and helping keeping them safe and strong, and get them psychological help so they don't get mutilated because they're unhappy in their own skin. If they started doing some kind of incredible mea culpa and took another side and said, we're jumping in, you stick with us, we'll stick with you, and we will put our money where our mouth is, maybe we will have made our point. If they don't want to do that, bury them. Bury them. Because if you're evil, like in the Black Lives Matter riots, is never punished, you're going to keep rioting. If you're breaking laws, you are never prosecuted, or you're let out of prison, you will continue to do that. Why wouldn't you? The point of law is as a deterrent. The deterrent means there's a cost. The left never costs each other anything because they are determined to destroy this nation. It is as real. I don't have to tell you guys. But you are going to have to identify as a Christian in this nation for us to have a shot. I mean, at work, at school, everywhere. Draw a line in the sand and start suing people. If you try to take me out, I will use whatever left of the First Amendment and I'll sue you into oblivion. You have got to identify as an American. You have to identify as a conservative. You have to identify as a patriot. You have to identify as a First Amendment. You have to identify as somebody that will not apologize ever for speaking the truth. You have to identify as someone who despises wokeness and will crush it where it stands. All evil should be crushed. I told you guys a couple weeks ago, I said, you know what? You're on my side. You're the people I'm talking about. You're the conservative Christians, for the most part, that watch this podcast and listen to it. And yet you all watched the Super Bowl. I said, that's my point. You didn't do anything consistently enough to where they said maybe we should change some things. Now, I heard people say that, they got off that and nobody kneels anymore. They just kind of backed off. They didn't apologize. They never said my mistake for crapping on the flag. They never said my mistake. Let us give a couple $1 billion to some conservative cause. They never did that. You didn't cause them to suffer once. No wonder they don't have to lose. No wonder Bud Light doesn't have to worry about putting Dylan on their can. They can lose a few $1 billion. They know you don't have the balls to hang in there and make sure that they never pay. They never forget. They don't have to worry about you because you're not going to be there. We've watched it happen over again. I haven't seen anybody stick to it. This one's still hanging on? Let's see. I have no confidence in it. I don't see people saying we will never return. Because that would make a message. That would let them know the only thing America has left as conservatives, as people of moral virtue, of the Judeo-Christian ethic, and who care about the Constitution, and the only thing we have left, we do not have D.C. They've abandoned us. They literally have sold us out. They are making millions and millions of dollars. They do not care if America dies as long as they get to pick up the pieces and be in power. They're fools or idiots. They don't understand that if China controls or if Marxism controls, they always use these people to destroy, and then they're the first ones they hang, first ones they put in the gulags, the first ones they kill because they realize we can't trust you because you sold out your own country, so we're going to kill you first. They're idiots. They're buffoons. They are completely oblivious to what's happening, and they're going to get exactly what they deserve. But they're selling us out. D.C. has given us away. They have literally created a coup, a civil war against Americans. The only thing we have left, guys, is numbers. We have the numbers. We have more people that believe like us than don't. And if we got consolidated, we could change things because they can't stop our numbers. You know, the Militia of the Mind is growing, and on May 1st, I believe, I'm going to launch the Militia of the Mind, where subscriptions will begin, and you can start to join the mighty 10,000, which will be the first 10,000 Americans who say, I want to get involved. How can I start doing things? And we're going to consolidate and see if we can try to create something that we can fight back. I don't know if it's going to work, you guys. I don't know if it's going to work. At least I died trying. At least I died trying. I got grandkids. I don't want to be 85 years old as they sit around my deathbed and say, Grandpa, tell us more stories about what it used to be like in America when we were free. We'll be in a very special room where nobody can hear us because they don't want to be spied on. I don't want that for my grandchildren. I'd rather have them say, Mommy, tell us about Grandpa. Why did he die? Because he wanted you guys to have freedom like he had it. And he would rather have not been there, and you take his memory and cherish that, and you live your life like a free man and go do the best you can and see what God has for you. I'd rather you have that memory of me as their grandfather than me sticking around as a slave watching this place crumble, and I didn't do anything. I won't do it that way, folks. You're going to have to decide if you'll die for this. That's how big it is. Anyways. Wyatt, got a little heavy there, son.
Yeah, I'll say, yeah.
What do you think about Bud Light?
Well, this isn't the first time a situation like this has happened, and honestly, the only thing I can think of is, what were you trying to prove? Like, at this point, it should be common knowledge that pandering to any group is going to lead to this to happen. So what's the bottom line? What's the point? What are you trying to say? And is it worth losing everything?
Well, they don't think they're going to lose everything. That's the whole point. They don't lose anything.
Well, why not? This happens way more frequently. If they were the first company to ever try this and go under, I'd get it. They're not. They are not the first, and they are certainly not going to be the last.
Well, it's because they're not controlling this, son. There's a bigger group controlling the world. That's what we're all learning now. If they go to digital currency in the banks, you'll never be free again. They will tell you where you can work, where you can live, what you will never own anything again. This is where we're going, guys. This is why this is as big as it gets. It means we have to rise up, and yes, we will have to arm ourselves, and yes, we will have to decide what is the next step if they are going to come and steal and kill and destroy us. We'll have to defend ourselves. It's not easy. And there are people fighting this fight, though. Matter of fact, our next guest is fighting the fight. It's a woman that I met a few years ago at the Southern Evangelical Seminary. I was performing. I'm going to be there again this October, emceeing and performing some comedy, but I'm bringing up some of the top theologians and philosophers and doctorates in theology in the country. Her name is Carol Swain, Dr. Carol Swain. She used to teach at Vanderbilt University. She's a black woman, and I only bring that up because she was a woman, she's black, and she came from very modest means, and was, I think, a child at a very young age, got married very young, and created a world for herself where she believed America would give her the freedoms and the opportunities if she worked at them. And she did. She became a doctorate. And she is a conservative. And she went through hard times. She was in the 60s. She was there when there was Jim Crow. So she's seen the worst of times. And that doesn't define her. What defines her is her faith and her belief in freedom. So Wyatt, I think the people are going to really enjoy this interview.
I hope they do.
I think that they will be inspired, enthralled, and that they will enjoy what they're going to learn. So, sit back. You need to take a breather after my last rant. And enjoy getting to know and becoming a fan of and a supporter of Dr. Carol Swain. Bring her on, Whitey boy. Well, as you know, on Stine Has Issues, the only thing that matters to me is the truth. You know, it's funny, we live in a country that has clearly lost its way. We were a nation that was founded off of a creed. No other nation had ever done that. We are a nation that tried to do something that had never been done in human history, allow folks from all different parts of the world to integrate into one and try to find sort of a common ground, a human experience that we could find that would be compatible with each other. Not easy to do. No country, no culture in human history has been able to figure out a way to get everybody together and try to be kind to each other. It's not easy to do. In the United States, of course, as wonderful as it is, has its own history and its own difficulties and its own challenges as it began to try to seek a way to become the freest, greatest nation in history. It's been a long, long road, and we made a lot of strides, but recently, in the last, 20, 30 years, something has begun to change in the milieu of America. The ideas of who we are, a foundation that we all sort of have, a history that we all could grasp and hold on to, is being changed. And the only way that we can try to rediscover that is to talk to people who are experts in this world, in this area, and see if there's a way for America and the Republic to remain. So I'm going to bring on a very, very special guest, somebody that I met a number of years ago. And we've just run into each other over the years, but I love what she does, and I love what she stands for. Very interesting, wonderful story, and we're about to introduce her right now. So hang on, buckle up. The woman I'm about to meet has published opinion pieces in New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Epoch Times, Financial Times, and USA Today. Dr. Swain is an entrepreneur, and her businesses include Carol Swain Enterprises and Unity Training Solutions, which offers an alternative to diversity, equity, inclusion training. Boy, can we use that. She holds 5 degrees. I don't hold any degrees because I'm stupid. And a PhD from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and an MSL from Yale, which means I don't even know how I can be in her presence without looking stupid, but here she is. Please welcome my special guest, Dr. Carol Swain. How do you do, Carol?
Hey, Brad.
Good to see you.
I never thought I'd be interviewed by a comedian.
Well, listen, I never thought that I would be a comedian who would be a MC at Southern Evangelical Seminary, but that's where we met. I don't know if you remember that, but you came to one of their conferences, and it was an interesting conference because they had reached out to me. They said, we're going to bring in the biggest Christian intellectuals and philosophers in the world, and they do it every year. And they said, we want you to come in.
I was in the audience.
I
was not on the stage.
No, but you could have been on stage. But I was there, and they knew I could do comedy. But he said it was a nice compliment. He said, you're the only Christian comic I know that understands these ideas, this ideologies, the philosophies, and because I've always used that as Christian worldview as my social commentary. It makes me kind of unique. So I felt good that they knew that I was trying to be intelligent and sophisticated. And then you came up to me afterwards and you just introduced yourself. So, just such a calm demeanor, humble, wonderful countenance about yourself. Next thing I know, I didn't realize I was dealing with somebody with such a high profile and such accomplishments. You are.
Hey, I didn't have it back then.
Oh, okay. Well, I think
I was sort of,
Well, you were getting.
Periphery.
Yeah. Well, but you'd already been teaching at Vanderbilt at that point, yes?
Yeah, in Princeton.
In Princeton. That's all. Just Princeton and Vanderbilt. Meanwhile, I've never even been allowed to visit Princeton and Vanderbilt. But the thing that I really want to discuss with you, should I call you Carol Doctor or your Empress? Which one? What do you prefer?
Whatever you feel most comfortable with.
Okay, your Empress.
You
want
can call me Carol. I don't want to be called your Empress.
Okay.
Or your Highness.
Okay, I'll
you
call
can call me Esther.
Oh yeah, amen. Oh, is her mic okay?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure it was a little offside. So here's something I wanted to ask you, Carol, if you don't mind. So, over the year and two that this podcast has grown, I've had a eclectic group of folks that have come on. And one of the things that I have made mention of many times over the years is anytime something happens in America that is volatile, if it deals with race, if it deals with minorities, if it deals with whatever the scenario where we have two different conflicting ideologies that come into clash, people will say, we need to have a national conversation about X, whatever it is.
I don't remember them saying that recently.
Yeah, no, they don't say it anymore. Exactly. Because there was a time when Americans cared about the liberal concept that everybody gets a place at the table, and then we discern the information and try to find a truth, an objective truth. Now, you're right, that's gone now. But one of the things I've mentioned to people for many years is we actually, as much and healthy as that would be, we can't have conversations like that because people don't want to hear the other point of view. Matter of fact,
you've given me an idea.
Well, let's hear it.
Why don't we try to have a national conversation and find people on the left that would like to engage and actually resurrect the whole idea of the national conversation?
Wouldn't that be something?
Well, I mean, all things are possible.
Amen. Well, but that is. And they are possible if we have an undergirding of a sense that all humans are made in the image of God. Now, that's the Judeo-Christian concept that created the West and gave us the possibility of having conversations with different points of view and learning to even agree to disagree agreeably, which is gone. So the thing I wanted to introduce to my audience about you, and I'm sure they've seen you, you've been on Fox many times and numerous other high-profile shows, but
what you didn't know was that I was a paid commentator for CNN for 2 years.
Oh my goodness! See, so you were infiltrating the CNN.
No. I was considered safe until they figured out who I was.
Which also happened to you in Vanderbilt, if I'm not mistaken. Well, let's find that. Let's discuss that. I know you've told your story many, many times, and I'm not trying to belabor that over and over, but it's important because what's ironic about you, Carol, is you're so accomplished, and you're so much care about truth and want to educate people and help people. You are the American dream.
I'm a product of the American dream, for sure.
And yet, if someone were to look at you, they would say you are persecuted, you are oppressed, and to me it's an insult, but I'm not going to put words in your mouth.
If they look at me, mostly I'm happy-go-lucky,
Yeah.
so they say, oh, that's a black person there. I'm not oppressed.
Well, exactly. But that's an important conversation. Because do you think it's even possible in this nation to ever get to a place where we just reference people on who their name, their accomplishments? We don't have to add a color. Wouldn't that be an upside to kind of seeing each other based on accomplishments as opposed to some sort of criteria that is arbitrary and seems to be put on to manipulate ideas instead of a really allow a free form thought? What do you think about that?
I would say that the world I move in today, like my friendship network, my church, the places where I go because I want to be there, we already have that community. And I think that, race is secondary. And for myself, if you were to force me to say how I identify as a Christian first, a conservative second. If I'm pushed, I guess a woman third. If I was pushed on political identity and race, and say, that would be much further down. But I identify first as a Christian.
Well, with all of that's happening in America,
and I never joined the Black Student Union when I was in college, and I've never seen myself as disadvantaged or handicapped because I was a woman from poverty and black.
Now, were you a single mother? I'm trying to remember the story.
I married at 16. I divorced at probably around 20, remarried at 24, divorced at 34. So I've had 2 divorces under my belt.
Okay. And you've come out unscathed.
Yes.
And you have children?
I have 2 sons that were from my first marriage, the one when I married at 16, had the first child at 17, and they produced 5 grandchildren, 4 granddaughters, and 1 grandson, and I have 3 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
2 great-grandsons and 1 great-granddaughter.
That's amazing. So what a wonderful Christmas you get to have with all of your relatives and your grandkids and great-grandkids. That must be a wonderful time.
Well, they don't live here. They're scattered.
Okay.
Yes.
But you do get to visit periodically?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Well, so you get to be an inspiration to them because they certainly live in a different world than you grew up in.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, now the conversation gets complicated because I don't live near the great-grandchildren. They're small. But there's a 7-year-old great-grandson named Hezekiah that has too much of my personality.
That's good.
Well, it is, except I can't control the fact that he goes to public school.
Oh, yes.
And I can't control what he gets at home.
Mm.
And I live too far away. I mean, I bring him to visit as much as I can.
Yes.
And I'm pouring into him.
Yeah.
But he's just amazing. He has a sense of humor. He tries to make people laugh. In fact, he has a little joke book.
Oh, like he writes jokes?
He reads joke books, but he tries to make people laugh. He said he's going to be a YouTuber. See, I'm already in trouble.
There you go. Well, you know what, though? Maybe he'll be great at it. I mean, there's money to be made in YouTube, believe it or not. Everybody can have their own TV show now.
He's 7 years old.
Oh, he's 7. That's wonderful. But I love kids. They're so innocent. I mean, that's what's beautiful about it. And it's also part of the problem that's happening in America is that kids at that such a young age who are just so ripe to have the whole world in front of them and have a beautiful possibility of anything they want. That was what the American dream was. You can be anything you want if you're willing to work hard enough. And that's been stolen. We have a Marxist-driven construct that has infiltrated as a cancer in this nation, and it is killing us. There was, when the Constitutional Convention convened, and I know you would know the story, but Benjamin Franklin is leaving, and a woman comes up to him and says, "Well, what have you done? What have you accomplished? What have you made? What do we have?" He said, "A republic, if you can keep it."
Right.
Well, it appears if we have, for example, there was a time when we felt like, hey, if that person doesn't work out, we can vote him out of office. Now, we don't know if we're even able to vote people out of office.
No, but that happened a long time ago. So some of the things that we're seeing manifested today or we've become aware of, it's been going on for a long time.
So you see this as it's just more obvious.
The spotlight's on it.
So you think that so how long would you say we have lost the actual republic, as in the people ruled this nation, as opposed to these self-appointed demagogues that now seem to run the nation? How long do you think we've lost that freedom that we thought we always had?
Well, I mean, I was a political scientist for 28 years, and I started my teaching career at Princeton in 1990. Well, when I was in school, we talked about the incumbency advantage and how difficult it was to oust an incumbent, and something like 98% of incumbents are reelected. I mean, that was an issue back then, that Congress had created a system where, using our taxpayer dollars, that they were able to, send out all this mail and all this communication, and they had set up a structure for their own reelection. So the fact that members of Congress could get reelected easily and they were impossible to defeat almost, that has been going on, 30, 40, maybe 50 years. What is different politically, I think, is that we now have Democrats and Republicans that don't seem to share any of the same values. And I believe at one time, I want to believe this, and I was a Democrat most of my life, that there was a time when politicians really cared about America. Most of them cared about America. They cared about the attainability of the American dream. And I can't say today that people love America in the same way. And I find that the party differences between Democrats and Republicans, when I became a Republican 2009, but I became a devout Christian first in 2000, that caused me to move away from Democrats and become an independent. And then in 2009, I joined the Republican Party. It was mostly because of the platforms and the fact that the Republicans at the time, at least the ones that I know or knew, really did believe in God, country, and family.
Right.
I'm not sure what Republicans believe, and I would imagine that when a 2024 convention, there will be a big battle over the platform because Republicans are moving closer to Democrats. And that's what I see. And I've taken you away from the way this interview was supposed to go. You wanted me to talk about my life, I guess.
No. This is fine. Okay. What's more important is your knowledge and your wisdom of your life and what you see. I've learned this before, and it was something I've said in my podcast before. You know, what makes one of the myriad of things that make America unique is it was built on a creed. It wasn't built through a coup or military coup. It wasn't built through a monarchy. It was the first time that a potential constitutional republic could actually put into place. It was always theorized, right? The Greeks had thought that perhaps there was for democracy. Founders didn't want a democracy. That's mob rule. They wanted a republic where the people could, have all be represented. But what we've discovered is that when you became an American, a citizen, that should be a better way to put it, that was a unique category.
It was something you wanted.
It was not only wanted, but treasured,
value.
And were willing to pay any price. For example, if I moved to France and became a citizen of France, I'd become a citizen of France. If I did it to Germany, I'd be a citizen of Germany. If I went to South Africa, I'd become a citizen of South Africa. You become a citizen of the United States, you call it American. You literally take on an identity of this idea that there's this greater good, that humans are free, that we are autonomous, that we have something that's more important. You can become anything you want to be. You're not stuck in a class system like if you were a Hindu in India. And what I've learned, Carol, is that I don't think we can say that anymore. I think we have to differentiate between a citizen and an American, because they no longer have the same weight, because there are now people who are citizens here, have the rights this country's given, who want to dismantle it.
Well, I mean, that's definitely the case.
So how do we define what American is?
I mean, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. I feel that the America that I once knew, the nation that I loved, and I was, born and raised in rural poverty, high school dropout, 1 of 12, married at 16. And when I started my education, I didn't have a plan. And people came into my life and steered me. But what I did know was that I was an American.
Yeah.
And I believed that if I worked hard, it would make a difference. And so I made decisions. I made good choices about how much to study, how to spend my time, based on my belief that it would pay off in the end. And so I was, despite, the poverty, alcoholic parents, no one encouraged me to see myself as a victim. I've never seen myself as a victim. And it was when I reached graduate school and started taking courses, in, I guess it was Marxist related courses in oppression, that's when I realized, that I was black, I was poor, I was a woman. I wasn't supposed to accomplish any of the things I'd already done.
Right.
But by then it was too late.
Well, intersectionality suddenly became a real word based on the category, supposedly, that they wanted to imprison you in, because that's what I'm saying. You are proof that if a human being, I'm not even talking about American right now, a human being makes a decision that I'm going to accomplish something, and as fellow Christians, and that makes us relatives, you're my sister in Christ, we also see the bigger picture, that God created a world where human beings could flourish and we could accomplish things. He told us when he made the Garden of Eden, go do stuff with this. You're not lazy. I'm not putting you in a hammock. Go work and continue to build from the creation I've given you. And that was kind of the Puritanic work ethic that was inculcated into America, that people believed if I'm willing to work hard enough, I can get out of poverty, which has been the basic representation of the human race.
But the message that we send our young people now is that you're a victim, you're born into poverty. There's not even encouragement to get out.
Exactly.
But there is the push for equity, equal outcomes, regardless of effort, and I think that's been very destructive. And there's a lot of dangerous things taking place in our society. And I would say that the message of the left has been particularly destructive for the black community. Mm. And we see black youth committing crimes that they never committed before, right, killing their parents and because middle-class blacks. And that's something new.
Yes. Well, so here's something I want to finesse with you a little bit, because I really... So much of life is your perspective and what you decide is true or not true. For example, I loved baseball growing up, so I played baseball. I was a Dodger fan because my dad was a Dodger fan, so I grew up. So I was a big, huge advocate and saw as a hero Jackie Robinson, because he was a Dodger. First black to cross the color line, could play professional ball. Everybody knows it. Before Rosa Parks, before much of this Martin Luther King civil rights movement, was this guy trying to play baseball, a bunch of people who didn't want him there. The courage, the fortitude that guy showed under unbelievable circumstances, to me, should be an inspiration to any human being that sees you can accomplish anything, even when everything is stacked against you. So I'm watching baseball, and my heroes for my team were Maury Wills, Willie, I don't know if you know much about sports. They're all black. I didn't even think black. I thought, that's a player that I like. So it never occurred to me to put him in a category. And so I guess I assumed that we're just humans, and we just take each other on our own merits. Well, critical race theory has completely upended that. Critical race theory says not only can you not subdivide people into outside of their race, but they're trapped there. And if
it's a very racist ideology.
Completely.
And even the fact that they are encouraging resegregation. The left has always liked segregation. And so, and what's interesting is that they've manipulated black people into demanding it.
Well, okay, so here's where if we want to have a national conversation, that's what we're having right now. How else can I even explore this, except for someone who is a little bit closer to the category than me? Clearly, I'm white, not black. So you're an expert, because not only did you study this, but you live in it. What has happened to a group of people that were in the worst case scenario when they started in this nation, outside of the Native Americans? I don't know if anybody had a worse starting point than being brought as a slave. You can't read, you can't write, you can't keep your family, you can't own property, you can't vote. You have zero power. Zero. Within 200 and so years, this group of people in the worst case scenario became presidents, attorney generals, billionaires, respected, to me, in a very odd way. It is an amazing story of resilience, and something that, again, humans can look at and say, look what happened to these people, and look what they overcame. And now, it seems to me critical race theory is telling them, you can't get anywhere. You can't survive. Anything that happens...
They actually try to take away what people have attained.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's
like
a disgrace.
Counseling blacks that are conservative. Anyone that their story doesn't fit the narrative, they try to destroy that person.
Explain that to me. What is it in that community about conservatives? And of course...
It's not coming from the community. It's coming from white progressives.
Okay.
And it serves their agenda. And their agenda is not even about blacks or gays or any of those groups they pretend to champion. It's about, I believe, destroying America. They're elitists. They're globalists. They want to erase national boundaries, and they will use black people, they'll use gay people, they'll use any category of people to achieve their goals. But at the end of the day, they don't care about those groups.
No, they're just pawns for them. I mean, we have the World Economic Forum that's telling us to our face that you're not going to own anything and you're going to like it.
But I mean, it's even worse than that. The elites, that the ones that are driving this agenda have also told us that the world is overpopulated, that the world can only support 1 billion people, and they want to pick the billion that it supports, and that it's at 6.8 billion. And so they've been very open, and they have been celebrating those that encourage suicide or humans voluntarily making themselves extinct. And the things that have come from the progressive left, it's totally nonsense. You know, this whole thing about a man can have a baby, and that there's no differences between males and females, and that people can change their sex.
Do you think that the attack... Okay, so let's start later, because you're a political scientist, so this is your wheelhouse. When I started doing comedy, well, I did it 30 years.
We need more comedy with this interview. I thought this was going to be a funny interview.
Well,
I was going to get to laugh.
Well, we started out that way.
But serious.
Well, it's serious.
Listen up.
Well, you're right. You're right. I have to come up with some joke. Wyatt, I'm going to have to figure something out. She needs some laughs. You got anything to show me?
Chill.
God.
Nothing?
I'm just supposed to be the guy behind the scenes making sure nothing breaks.
Okay, he's just... Okay, well, we'll figure something out.
Is this your normal persona? And when you're on stage, the person we see that's trying to make us laugh, that's not the real you.
It's both. What I discovered about comedy, and this is important.
I can be funny without trying to be funny. I'm just naturally funny.
Well, I'm sure that's true. And there's lots of people that fit in that category and don't realize how funny they are, mainly politicians. But, what I discovered, and it goes back to what you were talking about with just the sort of control. I said in my comedy, and I've always been serious, in the realm of my comedy, there's laughs, and then I talk about something that matters to me. So I'm more in the vein of George Carlin, Richard Pryor. There's humor, but then there's some truth that I care about. So I have seen even the trying to cancel comedians. Because we were historically the only ones that could make fun of the king, not get our head cut off. Somebody had to be involved in society that could mock the monarch and bring us into equality. It's like, you're not any better than us. And we were the ones that were, the jesters were the ones that were allowed to do that. Well, that's why they want us out. We don't want anything that doesn't allow us to completely control the narrative. And whoever controls the language controls the people. So
the left has no sense of humor when they're the butt of the joke.
They never do.
But they provide such great material.
Oh my goodness! Well, and they always say the same thing. Whenever they see my joke, they say, "You conservatives aren't even funny. You're supposed to punch up, not down." This is always the line they use. Comedy punches up, not down. Well, they think anything that exposes their nonsense is punching down because they don't have a sense of humor because
they don't have any logic, any reason, any argument, any legs to stand
Amen.
on. So you're always going to be punching down according to them.
Of course. Well, but what is most important is that these are, as you said, elite, self-appointed elite intellectuals with PhDs perhaps, who literally, and I do not mean this maliciously, I'm serious, who literally live life as though they were children, because that's how children behave.
They really do.
You're not allowed to mock, not allowed to make fun. If my feelings are hurt,
you can do it.
Of course they can do it, because children are selfish, and they don't mind stealing from you. You just can't steal from me. It is a psychosis that these people have. I call it you've heard of systemic racism. I call it systemic narcissism. Yeah. It is inculcated in everything they do is this narcissistic, I get to be whatever I want, you have to obey me, and whatever I call you is what I am. You're intolerant, they're intolerant. You're a bigot, they're a bigot. You're hateful, you're hateful. It's all exposed in that way. Well, so tell me, if I was coming to... if I was going to a black leftist, okay, and a critical race theorist, whatever, what's his name, Kinsey, the guy that, Ibram Kinsey, whatever the guy.
Ibram.
Okay.
Kendi.
Or if I was going to come to them and say, listen, can we find some kind of middle ground here? Can we find some way to be respectful to each other, even if we disagree? So we can, because I think we all do want people to be treated fairly. I think that's probably true. I do.
Well, I mean, before the conversation even progressed, you would have to acknowledge that you were a racist.
Okay.
Because he would only engage you, if you were willing to acknowledge that you have white privilege, you're racist, And if you commit to becoming an anti-racist, which he wants you to become an anti-racist, and we know that only white people can be racist. So anyone that's not white can say or do or anything they want to do, and that doesn't count.
Again, childish, children-like perspective, not mature, not deep, not wise. Okay, so
but once you become the anti-racist,
well,
your
what is
job
an anti-racist?
is the anti-racist is a white person who has become woke to the fact, that how oppressive the system is, to their own privilege, to the fact that they've set up this structural racism. And then your job after you become an anti-racist is to preach to other white people and call them out when you see them engaging in racism.
Okay.
And what we've done is redefine racism. We've redefined white supremacy. Back in 2002, I published a book, The New White Nationalism in America. It's challenged integration, Cambridge Press, academic book. But it had interviews with leaders of white rights and white groups. I didn't conduct the interviews. I had a white interview.
Now, why is that?
Well, I wanted them to be comfortable.
Oh, you feel like they might have held back or said what you wanted to hear.
I wanted them to be. I wanted to understand how they became who they were,
okay,
and what bothered them, and I just wanted to know how.
And these were white nationalists? Is that what they were?
I mean David Duke,
okay.
William Pierce, those types of guys. But back then, a white supremacist was a white person who believed that because of because they were Caucasian, they were superior to other groups. And so it was very clear what a white supremacist was. Right. Today, all white people are considered white supremacists because they have white privilege, and it doesn't matter if they were born in Appalachia and their parents never finished the second grade and they live in a shack in a hollow, that leaks every night. They're considered as having more white privilege than a black person who might be the offspring of a millionaire or a billionaire.
Okay, so ultimately, clearly, this is about power. Obviously, it's about somebody.
It is about power, but the reason I and people of, quote, people of color can't be racist is that, according to the Marxist theory, is that we don't have power.
Right, and to
be a racist, you have to have power.
You have to have power. Okay, yeah. Now, because as a white person, and honestly, Carol, and this isn't being,
I mean, they came up with those categories because we know that there's one race, the human race.
Right.
We are members of the human race, and as Christians, we are brothers and sisters in Christ. And the American experiment could only have worked under that Judeo-Christian framework where you believed in the possibility of being brothers and sisters in Christ. And the people that point to the fact, like, for example, the Southern Baptists, how they were formed because they were rejecting integration, that type of thing. Like, Christians have fallen short because they're human. But in the case of the Southern Baptists, like, I have lost track of how many apologies they have offered for their ancestors.
Yeah, right.
And they never can do enough apologizing. And I never see, the black pastors in the Southern Baptist Association accepting the apology and being willing to give up to release white people. You cannot have racial reconciliation or healing. It takes two people to reconcile. And so the whole premise that white people have to do the racial reconciliation, that's impossible. And so within the Christian framework, it should be very easy. We should be leading the example when it comes to race.
Amen.
Because we know there's one race, the human race, that we're brothers and sisters in Christ. And we know that forgiveness, is like huge in Christianity. That's in New Testament forgiveness. And as a black person, and if you were a black pastor or a black leader, if you're not modeling forgiveness and love, then you miss the mark when it comes to Christianity and the gospel.
Amen. Well, I mean, this country was built off a Judeo-Christian ethic. All the founders said it will not survive if we're not a religious people. It was not a theocracy, obviously, but it said you got to have morals.
Well, what the Marxists did was infiltrate the churches, starting with the Catholic Church in the 1940s, and they are in every seminary, today. And it seems like, they're winning the battle, and maybe they are, because if you believe in biblical prophecy and end times, we know that the story doesn't end in a way that's really neat and pretty. It ends in a way that there's going to be a lot of suffering for people that are Christians, because the world will continue to get darker and darker, and we can try and we can pray for a national revival, which I do when I'm thinking about it. We should be praying for it all the time, because
I do. Yeah,
that's
I pray
the only
for the Third
hope.
Great Awakening, because
That's the only hope for America.
Amen. Well, this is part of. So a situation happened to me many years ago. I worked with Promise Keepers, which is a men's gathering. I don't know if you remember them.
Promise
Okay.
Keepers.
So anyways, and it was, packed.
Is that a white supremacist?
It was
group?
white supremacist, yes.
Yeah.
And we made moonshine in the back. And a lot of
Right.
people didn't know that. But that's the only way we could make any money. But it was, and so they were very cognizant of having different kind of folks there. They had Chinese pastor, black pastor, because they were trying to just reach humans, because we're Christians. We're all made with the same.
They were trying to look like that group in Revelation, from every tribe and tongue and
Yes,
nationality.
that's
and
it.
Before the Lamb.
It's it. And we try, but people, unfortunately, when you bring people of different races and histories together, you bring your baggage with you. Unfortunately, we don't get to start from scratch. So everybody has the potential to, have their own preconceived idea of what is good or bad about anything that deals with where they live or what their philosophies are. But something happened, and it was interesting to me, because it gave me some revelation. I talked to you, we started this one, I saying we need a national conversation on A, B, and C. We've always said that, but you can't, because if you try to have a conversation like this, and if somebody's watching right now, and they will, because this gets shared around the world, they'll say, well, this is the white supremacist.
No, we have
You're going to say
have
that you have internalized, you're a white supremacist because you've that's what they say. How insulting.
Well, that's true. They can say that all they want to say. Because I definitely don't identify, with the blackness that I see displayed by Black Lives Matter. I don't identify with that. I identify as a Christian, and if Christianity is white Western culture, then I guess I'm white.
Well, I'll take you, but I would prefer you stay right where you are, because you're such a great representative. Well, here was the story I was going to tell you. So I have a
Wait till they take that quote out of
I know.
context.
No, and they will.
Yeah,
they will. I did a interview with Lauren Boebert, the congresswoman from Colorado. She's a Christian woman, and we had an interview.
Well, she has certainly taken a beating.
Oh, hasn't she? Well, she won again, but
I love Carrie Lake.
Yes, well, and Carrie, of course, her.
Have you interviewed her yet?
I want to. Do you know her?
I have her cell number.
Well, you're going to have to help me get her, because I do want to talk about this, what I consider to be, excuse me, the loss of our ability to vote anymore. I believe her
I mean,
clearly.
this thing about the loss with the elections.
Yeah.
That I believe it's very serious, because I don't know how many people will continue to work for campaigns, will continue to vote, will continue to put forth effort if they believe the system is rigged and corrupt.
Why would we?
And I think it was meant to get people to the point where they were so disheartened that they would give up. And they're talking about disenfranchising people and, making sure minorities get the franchise. They are disenfranchising conservatives.
Mm. You know who the problem is, Carol, to me?
What our so-called leaders?
Republicans.
Well, some of them, yeah.
Because their job, when I voted for them, was to check and balance what was happening.
Some of them are cowards.
Most of them are cowards.
And I think,
See, I know what a Democrat is. They're demons. I know what they believe. They kill babies in the womb, outside the womb. They don't believe there's such a thing as a man and a woman. They believe that there's no such thing as marriage anymore.
What you're saying is a conversation killer for that national conversation.
Well, of course. That's true. But I also speak truth, which also kills conversation.
Here's what I would say about them, is that A lot of them haven't thought about it. That the average Democrats, the ones that live on the street,
yeah,
most of those people are not intimately involved with what the leaders are doing, and so if they think about it, they would want to distance themselves from some of it.
And some have. The Hispanic vote moved over to Republican. We had more black.
That's what I'm telling you, that the American people, I think they are much closer together than it looks. If you look at television and politics, it looks so dismal.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with people, regular people, they're not in favor of all of these terrible things that their leaders do.
Right. I think you're right, and I believe that is true.
And so you can have a conversation with them. There are people that in the Democratic Party now, I would imagine in Congress, that are afraid to speak up. They don't agree, but they're afraid to speak up.
Well, but then don't run for Congress, because your job is to be the courageous representation of
migrants. And then with the Republicans, I'm torn between. Some of them are there just to feather their own nest. Right. But there are some that I just don't think that they're that bright. And they're so cowardly. And what really bothers me is that the Democrats know how to manipulate them and get them to make statements before they investigate. You throw something out. Throw a rumor out, and they're going to respond. They're going to start denouncing, one of their colleagues or denouncing somebody, and it will be on a distorted thing that was thrown out. Yeah. And so they're so easily manipulated. Yes. None of them say, well, we need to take the time to investigate.
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. Well, so let me kind of re-clarify what I said earlier, because I'm not taking it back, but let me make sure I couch it properly. I can't say that Democrats are demons. I'm sure because first off, I'm a Christian, so I mean, all people are made in the image of God. Secondly, it's an ideology.
Well, I can't say that God has a political party.
No.
But if he did, it wouldn't be the Democrats.
No. Well, clearly, because it's anti-Christian in every realm.
But you know something? It has become far more evil than it was when I was a Democrat.
Of course.
Yeah, I was a Democrat most of my life.
Listen, if John F. Kennedy were around, he would be considered a conservative. I mean, if you see what they used to believe and stand for, in strong America, borders, sovereignty, America first, this was a Democrat elements that they brought to the table.
When I was in graduate school, Lindy Boggs from Louisiana, she was the widow of Hale Boggs that ran for Congress. She was staunchly pro-life. And as a Democrat, she could be in the Democratic Party and she could be staunchly pro-life. Yeah. Not anymore.
No, it ain't close. Well, that's what I meant when I said the ideology of the Democrat Party is completely gone. It's left and it's demonic. It is.
But here's the thing, and for your listeners and viewers, there is a book that was written by he was a Mormon professor named Cleon Skousen. Okay. And he had worked for the FBI at some point. He wrote a book called The Naked Communists. Okay. That was published in 1958. And in that book, he has 45 current communist goals. And among the goals was to pretty much, are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I don't know this book, no.
You will be shocked.
Was he pro-communist? Or
he
was
exposing them. But he was saying among these goals was to take over one of the major political parties, to make the public schools transmission belts for socialism, to promote pornography, to have homosexuality accepted as normal. And his goals were read into the Congressional Record in 1963. So they were actually read into the Congressional Record. And everything that to normalize relationships with communist China, just you go down the list, it is shocking what they have accomplished. They have accomplished all of their goals, and Republicans helped them do it.
Yes, they have, and that's why.
I mean, Richard Nixon, normalized relationships with China, and so all of that stuff that we see today that we're fighting is the fact that the communist agenda has been integrated into the American system in a way that's been destructive. And many of our universities, the reason they fail, and you know most of them started off as Christian institutions, especially the Ivy League.
Yeah.
They failed because they were so curious about ideas. And so they welcomed the Marxists.
Right.
And they didn't realize that they would gradually take over. And that's what they did. And that's what they've done. And that's what we're reaping. And they have totally captured the Democratic Party. But if you read Cleon Skousen's The Naked Communist and go to his 45 current communist goals, you will see that that is what has taken over America.
Well, and it's been a long burn. I mean, it started with the Frankfurt School in the 20s, who were the cultural Marxists, started in Columbia University. That was when we began to lose our institutions of academia, was at Columbia, when these guys fled Germany. What is it about Germany always, like, choosing ridiculous? I mean, a country that's made more bad philosophy in human history than Germany.
What's happening now with our Constitution being upended and free speech, we can blame one of the people from the Frankfurt School, Herbert Marcuse.
Marcuse, yeah.
Yeah, who he wrote an essay, 25-page essay that you can Google and find, Repressive Tolerance. And it had to do with shutting down traditional voices and unleashing the voices of the marginalized. And see, with our free speech, we allowed them to speak, and you know, we were very tolerant towards them. Their goal was to take over and to shut down our speech and to be intolerant the way that they are.
That's exactly right, and it's bore fruit for them because the self-righteous. Listen, as Christians, we know what's going on because it's really a spiritual battle.
Well, a lot of Christians don't know what's going on because the past.
I'm talking about you and I, Christians.
Yeah,
I mean, we're
but this thing about social justice, all the churches use the buzzword social justice. They use the words of the left. They're being manipulated. Not all of them, but most of them. And they have no clue. The pastors have a superficial knowledge of everything, but they allow, you know, the liberation theology, and which is Marxist, all of that to get into the church. And with the Southern Baptist Convention, their guilt, like they have never received the forgiveness that Jesus Christ offers through the gospel, and so they're constantly trying to make amends, you know, to the black church and to black people, but they are making amends by actually embracing extreme ideas or allowing it into the church. Well,
they're allowing the culture to drive them instead of redeeming the culture, which is the purpose of Christians.
It's hard to redeem the culture, and but I feel like.
But that's your goal, right, as a Christian?
But the left, you know, Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. Anyone who hasn't read Rules for Radicals should read it, because it's all about infiltration, deception, and manipulation. And the political left, they had a plan, they had a strategy, everything's working like clockwork. And I believe to the extent that a person wants to be a Christian activist, they need to read Saul Alinsky, they need to have their own strategy.
That's right.
And that's one way to fight back.
Well, so for so many years, we were worried about the Soviet Union and the communism of the Soviet Union, and now it's China.
I must say something very controversial on this show.
Please.
And I'm going to say what I believe.
Okay.
This whole thing about Putin and the Ukraine, and I believe that for China has been the main beneficiary.
Of course.
But that the United States set that up. They instigated that invasion, you know, by trying to put the NATO forces in the Ukraine, knowing that Putin would have to act. And some political scientists had written about that, and they said it would be the same as if Russia or North Korea had missiles in Mexico or some area board in Canada, board in the United States. It was akin to that.
Or even Cuba, the Cuban missile
crisis. They knew exactly what they were doing. And when you think about the suffering of the Ukrainian people, I mean, Zelensky, Obama, 2014, they started setting him up, you know, to be the president. So there's this actor that they set up to be the president, and apparently he played the president, I guess, in a movie.
Yeah, or a sitcom, I think.
Yeah, and so...
one of my people.
They're not even creative. Yeah. But so they set him up. They have set up the American people, and they've made, you know, Putin is the demon. And you know something? Putin reminds me of some of the Old Testament leaders that were destroying Israel, and they say, the Lord your God, you know, gave you into our hands.
Yes.
And so, like, the evil that the America has disseminated around the world, that we appear, or at least, you know, to many people, we were a Christian nation, we are a Christian nation, but we have been so apostate. God has to hold us accountable. But this thing about the demonization of Putin, all of that was the United States. When the Iranians, they call us the Great Satan, you know something? Look at how we act. Look at what we do.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
I think God will hold...
well, he already is. He's already holding us accountable. He's already disrupting everything that made us American. We loved our country. We loved
we loved each other.
We did. Now, okay, so let's get into that.
And I grew up in the rural South. And, you know, when I tell my story, and I'm working on my memoir, and I want to be back on when I publish it.
You will. I would love to have you.
But one of the memories I have, you know, amidst the poverty of the rural South, my grandmother worked for this white family. And I don't know how much the woman paid her per week for cleaning the house, but she gave her a library. At one point, my grandmother came, you know, the bookshelves, the encyclopedias, the great books of the Western world. I had that for a few years during my developmental years. Now, eventually the house burnt down, but it did, and the library
you lost your library?
Yeah,
oh,
I did,
my goodness.
but not before I really got to enjoy it, that I had access to those books.
Well, you know, it's funny, too. It just reminded me of an old saying that, you know, when an old person dies, it's like a library burning down, because they have so much wisdom that is gone, we'll never hear again. And that's what, you know, and certainly the lack of education, the lack of Americans caring about this nation, what is true, what is not true. You know, one of the things that CRT has tried to...
Well, let me tell you what the universities have done.
Yeah.
They've used affirmative action, you know, to bring in racial and ethnic minorities. You know, many of them were not qualified for the universities they got into, and that made them very angry and hostile. And while they're angry and hostile through the ethnic studies programs, they have radicalized them.
Yes.
And so, and they've taken them away from any Judeo-Christian values that they had from the beginning. And so they've put these people out there, and they are helping destroy the community.
Yes. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this then. So we all agree that Marxism is at the root of all this. It's clear. I mean, that's what political correctness was, cultural Marxism. We already know about Marcuse. We already know about the Frankfurt School. We already know about postmodernism.
Sigmund Freud was part of it, too.
Part of it, too. All of these guys with their secular humanist version of the human race.
And what was the guy, Adorno, was the authoritarian personality?
Yes, yes. Do, but we at least have to tell each other what's going on and see if people will rise up.
Well, before we get off, I'd like to tell people how they can find out about my work.
Of course.
Okay.
We should be good. All right, good.
Check.
Where did it stop?
About 52 minutes in. I'll cut this part out.
Okay, so we can just start from right here. We haven't lost anything, or should she re-speak anything?
I can't re-speak anything to the same way.
I mean...
No, you should go to this
Okay. So let me ask you this. Since we know that Marxism is at the root of all this, and like I said, there was a time when our biggest fear was Soviet Union. Now it's clearly China. I believe China was completely involved in the Corona cult, and that was a biological weapon. I believe this is... But there's bigger forces. That's what we learned about Corona. There are bigger forces at play in the world than just the simple... communist or theocracies.
What's
or
this globalism?
Who is it? Who's our enemy, Carol? Who's our enemy? Who's trying to destroy freedom in this world?
I mean, do you want me to just say?
Say who? I don't care if it's a person, an ideology, but is it as simple as China is trying to take over the world? Is it just, or is there something
first,
big?
We know about globalism,
right?
And just how in America the people that are destroying America from within believe that they want to be like the other nations. And so the other nations control speech. The other nations, some of the other nations will put their people in concentration camps.
Happening in China right now.
Yeah, and so I think that what we have had that was distinctive, that made us the envy of the world, that is not valued by many of the elites.
Yeah.
And I believe.
But who are they?
Who
are the elites? Who are the people? They want power. They want to control.
Some of them are, the progressive university professors. Some of the people that have been shaped, I would say, by Marxist ideas. They may be newspaper editors. I mean, they clearly the media is being controlled. I think for people who want to understand our society, I'm throwing out all these books.
No,
I should be throwing out my own books.
Please
I'm throwing
do.
out this one.
Go ahead and throw them out. All of them.
George Orwell's 1984. Lots of people read that book. They read it in high school. Well, they need to read it today. And if you're an American, also read the Patriot Act. And just how we started losing our freedom so rapidly. But if you read George Orwell, I mean, it's like he was a prophet. I didn't know George Orwell was a prophet, but he was a prophet. Read Huxley's
Brave New World.
Brave New World. All of these things, these people that were creative types were so prophetic.
Yes.
And they have, we sort of see just how it happens. And we are at a point, I don't know if we're at a point of no return, but I can tell you my decision as a person is that I will not live in fear. And, I believe our government is dangerous, that the deep state is real, that if you, want to get a sense of the deep state, watch the Born Identity series. Watch them. Maybe you watched it when it first came out, 10, 15 years ago. Watch it again.
Wow.
Reread George Orwell. And then when you're ready to fight, read Saul Alinsky, but read it from the perspective of what of these things can I use without selling my soul, because the book is dedicated to Lucifer.
Right.
And so as Christians, we can't use it all, but I think we can infiltrate, and that we are positioned in places where we have power, and that some people like me are very outspoken.
Yeah.
And so, if whatever we believe, we will stand up for it.
Yeah.
But there are other people that are called to be quieter and to be more subtle. Those are the people that can gather information. And I think when the time comes for them to be bold, they should be bold. And as a Christian, I look at it as, I'm going to die someday. I don't know. I could die tomorrow. Well, when I die, I want my life to have counted for something.
Yes.
And so...
and stood for truth in the midst
right,
of it.
And so if by speaking out what I believe is truth, if it makes a difference in someone else's life, if it galvanized some young person, it would have been worth it.
Yes, well, so if we observe everything that's happening, if we see what's going on, if we uncover the devious nature of what's happening to us.
It's been uncovered right before our eyes. We just
are
not able to do anything about it.
But let's say there's more like-minded people like you and I. This goes out and people say, you're right, we got to fight. And then this guy says, and that guy, maybe once in a while some congressman, Republican, has the courage to act like he was supposed to when he promised he would represent my voice when I voted him into Congress, instead of the cowards that you people have become. You're the check and the balance. You've done neither. So either you're stupid or you're in on it. So you better make up your mind.
It's both. And I think that you say your audience extends beyond the United States.
Yeah, I get people from Ireland. I get people from South Africa, Australia.
I can tell you that there are other nations where I believe that their structure of government is stronger. They have people that are willing to, fight for human freedoms. And that America has reached the point that we almost need help from the outside.
I know.
So if there are people out there, Elon Musk is certainly not perfect, and there are things that he believes in that scares me, like this transhumanism and this neural link that
AI,
they're going to put in the brain. But when it comes to fighting for free speech, he's a South African. And I think for America that people from the outside may need to come over here and fight with us, because the global agenda concerns all of us. When they say that there should be only 1 billion people on the earth.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to get rid of, what,
It's genocide.
5.8 billion people. How are they going to do that? That affects all of us. And I
Yeah.
think that we need to unite, just like they are united, the globalists. We have to unite.
Yeah.
And I believe, as a believer, that you can do much with little. And through Christ, we can do all things.
Amen.
And that at the end of the day, whatever will happen, but I want to make sure I've done my part.
Amen. Well, let me ask you this as we get ready to wrap her up, because I really appreciate your time and your wisdom and your thoughts. And your life. You're an inspiration to Americans. You are an American. You have a different, deep history than mine. That was the story I was going to tell you about Promise Keepers. I went up, I did a whole joke about the pilgrims coming over and how hard it was, and they had their children, and they were throwing up, and I'm just making a joke about how hard it was for these original people to come to this nation, and how we built it into whatever it's become, where people from all over the world want to bring the best of their culture and bring it here and become one, because we are not built on multiculturalism, we're built on e pluribus unum. So we need everybody, but you got to be one. House divided falls. So that's a joke. Tony Evans came on after me. This is back in 2003. Great guy, great pastor. He looked around at all these men. He goes, well, that wasn't the boat I was on. And they all laughed. But Carol, it was the first time in my life that I realized not every American does have the same story. I just assumed, and maybe to my bad, this is what by the way, a national conversation looks like. Being honest about things. I assumed if you're an American, you honored the Mayflower and the Mayflower Combat, you cared about the Founding Fathers, you cared about what we fought for, what we did. I just assumed that was our story.
I think for the most part it is. And let me tell you that I claimed the Founding Fathers, and a person that was into genealogy did a genealogical study of my family background. I have an ancestor named Thomas Jefferson.
Really?
And I'm from Virginia, and this Thomas Jefferson is from Popular Forest, where Thomas Jefferson had a plantation.
Right.
And so maybe he is my fourth.
How about that?
The founding father in more than one way.
Is there anything, and I hate saying these things.
I mean, we Americans, and I think that even if you're the immigrant, you come here, the American story is your story.
Yeah.
Our Judeo-Christian roots, where we came from, the covenant that the founders tried to make with the God of the Jews. I think that covenant may very well bind us. Because the Puritans, set out to make a covenant with God.
Yeah.
That this would be a Christian nation.
Right, and I think God has honored that for a long time.
And the 13 colonies all had charters that referred to Christianity. And so no matter how much people want to dismiss, America's roots, they would have to, destroy the charters of the original 13 colonies.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. Is there, I'm trying to just be, I don't care about problems, I care about solutions. Is there anything in the conversations between white and black that white people don't understand? Is there something that is missing? I can't speak
for black people. I can only speak for me.
So is there something that maybe we
that
don't understand?
I think the most racist thing that white people do, and white progressives, is they treat racial and ethnic minorities as if they were infants, incapable of self-governance. And so this whole thing with CRT and critical race theory, and that white people have privilege, they lay the responsibility on white people to fix the problem for racial and ethnic minorities. And when it comes to black people, the problems affecting black communities can only be addressed by black people. And when you blame white people, it takes your eyes off what you can do for yourself. And so it's counterproductive. It serves the goals of people who hate black people. The people that came up with defund the police are people that don't care about the violence in black communities and the need for there to be police. The people that push abortion on black communities are trying to to reduce the black population. So when Bill Gates gives millions of dollars to Africa for abortions, it's obvious what he's doing.
Yeah.
He wants to reduce the population in Africa. And so I think that the conversation that whites and blacks should have should be one based on honesty, and it needs to do with needs to address the crime. The black people, in some ways, there's a crime wave that we don't talk about because it's not nice.
Yeah.
And, like sometimes now they won't put up the photographs of people, or they won't say what the race of the assailant is. That information is relevant.
Well, like you said, it's infantilizing folks. But more importantly, it's not dealing with truth. As a Christian, if I had to define my faith in one word, it'd be truth. Jesus said, I am truth.
There is an objective truth.
There's an objective transcendent
that the
truth.
left rejects. And they have to reject it to come up with the crazy ideas.
Have to.
Yeah.
These are the same people that said logic and reason is racist. Mathematics is racist. Chemistry is racist.
Working hard is racist.
I mean,
getting to places on time.
Can you imagine being more insulted as a person of color, if that's what you call it?
And recently in the news, there was a story about this black professor. She's young, but she wanted to decolonize the classroom. And her background is biology, and decolonizing the classroom for her meant she'd give everyone an A, no homework. All they have to do is show up. And decolonizing means she's rejecting the Western European ways of doing things. Traditionally, a professor would prepare for class. They would present their expert knowledge, and they would evaluate students on how well they were able to absorb that expert knowledge. Decolonizing the classroom means you don't do anything.
Yes. Well, exactly. And again, an embarrassment. And clearly, they won't be educated. So when they leave that classroom, they have nothing to bring to the table.
But I feel sorry for the young woman, because maybe in her education she didn't get it, and she wasn't able to teach. And so she was put in a situation she couldn't handle, and so the way she's handling it is decolonizing the classroom so that she doesn't have to pretend to have knowledge that she doesn't have.
Well, and that's what affirmative action, I think, did the most damage, was it allowed people to get into universities that they didn't belong. And by the way, it wasn't just black. I mean, there's lots of people of colors that can't get into Yale. It's not easy.
We didn't have much time talking about my story, and this interview really has to come to an end.
Yes.
But for myself, I started at a community college, and made a decision that I was going to be an honor student, because I was applying for jobs, and I wanted to distinguish myself on the job applications. And so I checked out and purchased books on how to make A's in college, how to take objective tests, how to do write essays, and I applied those principles, and I graduated from my 4-year college magna cum laude while working full-time. And this was a predominantly white school. I was one of 20 blacks, and it was not uncommon for me to have the highest grade in the classroom. Me, the high school dropout, who dropped out after the 8th grade. So America made that possible for me. Never intended to continue my education, but had people encourage me. And for the most part, these were white people. And what affirmative action did for me was it ended discrimination and gave me an equal opportunity to compete. I had an equal opportunity to fail.
Yeah.
I had an equal opportunity to succeed. And so my success was based on what I chose to do. That's what's been removed, because equity is not about equal opportunity or merit or meritocracy. It's about everyone showing up getting the same reward. And that has destroyed higher education, and it's destroying corporations and life in America.
And it diminished the hard work you did to try to achieve a higher grade. You were proud of that. I outworked you. I outthought you. I outeducated myself. You should be proud of that. It's okay. It's a good thing. Well, so if you were to tell my people just quickly, what is your purpose? For people to know about Carol Swain, to follow you, what are you on this earth to do, and any books or literature that you've done that you would like people to, so they can, because it's an important story.
Okay, what is my purpose? I'm supposed to say that very quickly. I'm going to say something that people say all the time, that I'm called to speak truth to power and not fear the consequences.
Amen.
And so I believe that to be true. And I have, I actually have two companies and a nonprofit. My nonprofit is Be the People Nonprofit. And that came from the idea of the Be the People nonprofit, which is a call for the we the people to stand up and be the people who reclaim our nation, was a title of a book that I wrote called Be the People, A Call to Reclaim America's Faith and Promise. So I have Be the People nonprofit. My website is bethepeoplenews.com, and there's a CarolMSwain.com website. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Getter.
And what is the book you would recommend that you've written, or tell them your book so we can get them on Amazon for Christmas?
Oh, if you go to my website, bethepeoplenews.com or CarolMSwain.com, click on the book link, and the two most recent books are Black Eye for America, How Critical Race Theory is Burning Down the House, and I have one, Countercultural Living, what Jesus has to say about life, marriage, race, gender, and materialism. And these are short books. Like in academia, I wrote fat books, but these are short books. But they have sources, and each book ends with suggestions and
good for you,
things that people can do.
Yes.
I don't believe in laying out a problem and not putting for a solution.
God bless you, Carol, because that's what I keep telling my people and have said from the time I started this podcast. I'm not interested in coming on and being a conservative and a Christian and a patriot and having everybody go, me too. Don't care. That's just me talking. I don't need you if I'm just going to sit here and tell myself what I believe. If we don't have solutions in practical ways to go out and try to fight for this, we will not have a nation again. And we have to fight. It is revolutionary wartime.
Well, the last thing I want to say is for Christian believers out there and would-be Christian believers, and you don't know it yet, read 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, I'd hear from heaven and I would heal their land. And America needs healing, and so do other nations around the world. And so for Christian believers, we know what we can do.
Amen.
Thank you.
Well, God bless you, Carol. Thank you so much. I love listening to you. I hope you come back when you get your new book done.
Okay.
And this is Carol Swain, and as you can see, I only bring on the best of the best. This is God's Comic, Brad Stine. Remember, all I'm doing is putting the woke back to sleep.